One of the themes that you get when you read the scriptures, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, is that when people get a sense that God is calling them to follow Him and to do something specific for Him, almost immediately they start telling God why He's made a mistake. That He's clearly chosen the wrong person, and it's often an expression of fear that people have a sense God's calling me to do something special, and they get fearful about that. And that often happens not just in the Old Testament times, but today, when people first get an inkling that the Lord is directing their life in a certain way, maybe towards seminary or some other specific vocation. They have to deal with some fears that come up as they think about that possibility. So,
I mean, I talk to a lot of guys. I used to be a college professor and still have contact with people who are in college and do a little bit of campus ministry work now in my pastoral year. And they find out that I'm studying for the priesthood, and some of these guys are thinking about it somewhere, but their immediate thought is, I'm not worthy. Mm-hmm. It's the same kind of thing that you're talking about in the biblical different, I mean, everybody from Moses to Paul himself, who said, I'm not, who am I that I should be doing this for God? But the point is that Christ is the one who calls, and He's the one who knows our hearts even better than we do. And I don't think any of us or any priest or any seminarian that I know of thinks that on our own he's worthy of such a calling. It's that you have to key into the understanding that God knows what He's doing, even if we don't know what He's doing in us.
No, I agree. I think for me it was seeing, it's almost like an indoor climbing wall. You're at the base and you look up and you just think, there's no way. These handholds, these footholds are just too small. There's no way that my massive foot or my hand is going to be able to situate itself just right, and for me to lean in and use my weight and use whatever pathetic strength I think I might have to actually climb whatever mountain of a wall this life of vocation, this life toward priesthood is going to ask for. And then you get up to that wall and you realize, because people in your life have been encouraging and you feel this longing and this desire from the Lord on your heart drawing you toward that wall, then all of a sudden you realize that there's a color-coded map, in a sense, that if you're willing and you want to take that risk and take that jump and say, okay, I'm going to trust in the gear, I'm going to trust in my harness and in the ropes and those people that are around me that are supporting me, the mechanisms that are in place for vocations in the church and your family. You realize that color-coded map on the wall and the footholds and the handholds guide you in the direction that the Lord is calling.
I think that's a great image of just a climbing wall, and I had a sense at the beginning of my discernment and a feeling called of just how overwhelming it was. It seemed like such a big step, and it seemed like such a long journey that how was I ever going to do this, and then you slowly learn that you do it by very small little increments and small steps, and one step leads to the next. But one of my biggest fears going in was just how my family would react. I'm very close to, I have a large family, very close to them, and we did a lot of stuff together. We played music together, and one of my sisters is severely handicapped, and I was a big part of her care. So how was potentially my going off to seminary, my becoming a priest, going to affect the equilibrium of the house, of the family, of my sister's care, was one of the biggest fears. But I think at a certain point you just have to take that step. You have to talk to your family. You have to say, this is what I'm interested. I'm feeling called to do this. What do you guys think? How can we work this out? And that's what I did with my family. And my fears were relieved, and that they said, this is what you really feel called to do, then pursue it, and we'll take up the slack, and we'll care for my sister, and so they were great. They were just so supportive. Another fear that I had was just a fear of speaking in public. And, you see priests, and it seems like it, especially at the beginning, a big part of what they do is, they're in front of everybody, and they're doing the homily, and they're teaching catechesis, and they're doing RCA, and there's a lot of speaking involved, and I never saw myself able to do that, so that was a big fear. But once again, little by little, you kind of get introduced to the idea. It becomes a little more familiar, and you start to do it, and you realize, well, it's not as hard as I think, maybe, and maybe I'm better at this than I give myself credit for. And I think it's just, it's like Peter coming to Jesus over the water. Sometimes you have to take that step. You have to get out of the boat, and very likely you might sink, as Peter did, and you might have doubts, and you might sink, but Jesus is there to pick you up, and so that was my experience.
I think that my mom is from a Methodist tradition, and she loves going to Mass with me, but she doesn't understand much about Catholicism at all. And when I first started talking about this sense that I was being called to the priesthood, she seemed concerned. She was afraid that I would be terribly lonely. And I kept talking to her. I couldn't figure out quite why. And it finally dawned on me that my mother equated priesthood with radical monasticism, so that she thought I would never actually physically leave the church building, and and that sort of thing. And once I explained that to her, and I said, it's really not very different from the Methodist ministry. I think that's a fear that not only our families have, but that people, men who are thinking about the priesthood, is I have to give up every aspect of a normal life. I have to go around, with my hands like this and being, holy all the time in an obvious way, when in fact it's very normal. I think for our families who worry about us, the thing that tends to change things over is when they have a chance to visit the seminary, or to come a couple times at different summer placements. My mom has come to hear me preach, and she's met the people, and you realize this is actually a very welcoming life in which we are embraced by this huge family called the parish, or called the church. So I think that's one of the fears that just experience, both for families and for guys who are thinking about the priesthood. It's really very normal.
Simple things too. I was talking to my sister about it the other day, just about what seminary life is really all about, and what I'm going to be looking forward toward, or not really looking forward to later as a priest. And she said, "Well, what about?" And I knew it was coming, but what about Christmas? There's a sense of fear on the family too. I mean, like you were saying, with not understanding that life you were going to live in, and then thinking it's just a life of total solitude. We want things to be as they always were, and the way our family dynamic has always played out. Don't disrupt that. Everyone has always had on their mind, to get married and to have kids and to bring them in and to be able to have the cousins interact, and you're going to get cut out, and you're going to be the odd man out whenever you show up, and you're always going to show up late. And what about all of that? And all of a sudden, those fears and those, well, I did want that, and I did long for that, and am I going in the right direction? Because my longings that I thought I had are no longer there, because I'm yearning for what Christ I know is calling me to. And what they're asking for and what they're longing for is completely normal. And maybe I've just got it all screwed up. And then I have to step back and say, no, look at the rest of my life. Look at what God is doing in me, in the ministry that I've taken up, and what I love about it, and how I'm able to dive into this new family, and yet still retain the family that I had. As they can step back, they can see all of that and say, okay, my fear, and that's really what it is. It's the root of it. I want you to be happy, but my fear is crowding everything out. But then they step back and they say, okay, he's happy. It's okay. We can be happy because he's happy. And now they go out and pass out pictures. Look at my son.